Hemingway wrote that Paris is a movable feast. But my friend Daniel, an artist and pleasure seeker, had a different opinion. According to him, Paris is a city where you can die of a broken heart, and men should watch out when ending their relationships, for overly emotional ladies might actually pierce their hearts. This expression always brought a smile to Lou, our mutual friend, as he never fully comprehended its significance. Until, on one not-so-fine summer day in 1923, a hotel maid found him with a knife in his heart. When it happened, Daniel and I were having coffee at a cafe across the street, waiting for Lou. Suddenly, one of our acquaintances who lived next door to him burst into the cafe, visibly shaken, and informed us that the police had been called to the site of the brutal murder. Daniel and I couldn't believe her words, so we hurried to Lou's room. Almost all of our friends were there. The murder of a Parisian Casanova was even more intriguing than a premiere at Odeon. Detectives, with their notepads in hand, walked around Lou's body, their faces thoughtful as they examined the knife sticking out of his body. Pulling out a handkerchief from my bag, I let out a tear and approached one of the officers. I had to introduce myself as the victim's cousin and pretend to feel faint and barely able to stand. I couldn't pry any useful information from him, but just in case he might come in handy later, I decided to pique his interest in me. And believe me, it's not that easy to do with grief painted on your face. However, after a few minutes of effort, I secured an invitation to dinner at one of the finest Paris restaurants. Perhaps it's time I shared a bit about myself. My name is Julie, and for me, Lou's death meant the end of my financial security. We weren't friends, but rather partners. We had a small, shall we say, venture of our own. I had connections and he had true masculine charm and charisma. Now grab a pen and take notes on how to make your living properly. Step 1. Find the right woman. We only chose those who were married. They highly valued discretion, therefore, following a breakup, to preserve their honor and marriage, they would refrain from causing any scandal. Step 2. Ignite the flame of love. I laid the groundwork for future affections, arranging the women accidental encounters with Lou to give them the impression that fate itself was bringing them together. Step 3. The fever of love. When passion took root in the chosen lady's heart, the whole charade began. With tears in my eyes, I would rush to her side. My words were almost always the identical. "Oh, madame, he's restless. He's even running a fever. He's lying there calling for you. His heart will burst if he doesn't see you." And there she was in Lou's room, sitting by his bed, tenderly stroking his hands and face and speaking of love. Step 4. From the lover to the kept man. After a while, Lou would inform his mistress that he had to leave Paris. He would say he couldn't afford to live in the capital because of money problems. When Lou was in other cities, he claimed he had to go work in Paris because of a lack of money. Typically, not wanting to lose their lover, the women would start supporting him. And the more madly a madame loved, the more money we could squeeze out of her. Now I had to find a new partner, or come up with new schemes to make a living. Poor Lou. Though I must admit I was less interested in who killed him, and more concerned about where the hell my money was. My partner's safe was open and empty. As such, Lou's killer clearly knew about the money and took it. How much was there? About 12,000 francs in cash and jewellery. We'd run our scheme about 5 times in Paris, and 10 more times in other cities across France. Initially, we'd split the spoils right away, but the apartment I rented had been robbed the previous month. The burglars hadn't found my main stash, which was pretty odd, but they'd grabbed everything that was lying around. After that, Lou and I decided that the safe box in his hotel room would be a lot more secure for the money. Unfortunately, I'd foolishly decided to entrust him with my share. I hoped our next venture would be the last, and I'd return to my hometown of Marseille. There, I'd give part of the money to my sister, Rita, who'd supported me for a long time after our parents died, and only when things got really bad did she send me to the orphanage at the nunnery. As for the rest of the money, I dreamed of living a carefree life. When part of your childhood is spent on the streets, then in the orphanage, and as an adult, you have to fight for every morsel of bread. An ordinary, carefree life becomes your ultimate dream. The last woman from whom Lou squeezed out not only money, but also a few gemstones, was Madame Daudet. She was in her late 30s and married to a famous patron and banker. It seemed to me she was one of our easiest catches. Could Madame Daudet have killed Lou? Did she want to get even for her broken heart? The following evening, I had the date with the detective. His name was Gervais Landry. He was quite handsome. He came to pick me up with flowers and was the epitome of gallantry and attentiveness. Here's another tip. If you need to extract information from someone, start with flattery and show interest in them. Talk only about them. When my policeman finally let his guard down, I gently touched his hand, tilted my head to the side, and asked how the investigation into Lou's murder was progressing. Gervais said that Lou had probably been killed at night. About 5 hours before that, a specific order had been made to his room: curry with coconut milk and Indonesian rice flowers. With a note, no onions or garlic. And the order also specified to add cardamom to the coffee. Lou had many bruises and a broken nose. The killer was strong, so it was highly unlikely it was a woman. After the dinner, I invited the handsome Gervais to the bar for a shot of Calvados. Instead of 1, we had 6. Although while he was drowning in alcohol, I was, so to speak, fertilizing the soil in the planter next to our table. When I thought the policeman was ready for that, I used all my charm to get him to take me to the crime scene, which he did willingly. In Lou's room, I had to finish Gervais with a flask of gin, and while the defender of law and order slept on the bed, I searched the room for something the police might have missed. I sat at the desk. On its top, it had everything for writing arranged: paper, a pen, etc. I examined the top sheet and saw indentations on it left by a pen while writing. So perhaps I could try to find out what Lou had written and to whom. I found a pencil and carefully stroked it on the sheet. The text appeared in barely visible white lines. I couldn't make out most of it. The only clear phrase was, "Go to Spain without me. I'll see you there. Love." I wondered who he was writing to. My attention was drawn to the ashtray. It still had ashes in it. They were greyish-white and scattered in lumps. This meant the cigarettes had filters. I'd been lucky to smoke those only a few times, such a rarity they were. Then my nose picked up an unusual scent. I leaned in. The ashes carried a faint hint of vanilla. The cigarettes could have been made on order. That immediately spoke of status. Was it possible that a jealous husband had found Lou? I felt sorry for leaving Gervais like this. He was a decent man. So I woke him up and, holding his arm, led him outside. We hailed a taxi and I took him home. It was late at night when I finally reached my place. On the stairs, I heard someone rummaging in my apartment. My heart almost stopped. I was about to turn and run away when I dropped my keys, which clattered loudly on the steps. The noise in the apartment stopped, and the intruder lunged toward the door. I sprinted down the stairs, hearing the pursuit behind me. Out on the street, it was easier. All I needed to do was simply to find a place to hide from my pursuer. I spent the night at Daniel's, but sleep eluded me. My mind buzzed with questions, the main being, "Lou, what have you dragged us into? What was I supposed to do now? Was it more reasonable to search for the money or run? But from whom?" No, I decided I'd act swiftly and at least find my share, and the rest, it wasn't my concern. The next day, I went to see Madame Daudet. If the murderer wasn't a woman, it could possibly be her deceived husband. We reminisced about Lou, but no more than politeness required. She cried sincerely, saying she found out about his death in Spain from a telegram her friend sent her. Madame Daudet was certain her husband knew nothing of the affair. When she was finally distracted by some urgency, I slipped into her husband's study. There were plenty of books and papers in there. A checkbook lay on the desk. On the last check stub, I saw that it had been made out to Lou. What on earth did Monsieur Daudet pay him for? Catching the husband was easier than I thought. Every day at the same time, He had lunch at a bistro not far from his bank. I sat across from him and started crying loudly. Every time Monsieur Daudet raised his fork to his mouth, I did it louder and louder. Eventually, he approached me with a handkerchief, somewhat flustered. I thanked him and struck up a conversation, and there we were sitting at the same table, me wiping away tears and pretending to be a betrayed wife. I wouldn't wish the pain of marital infidelity on anyone. Monsieur Daudet took my hand and said he was sorry, and he understood what I meant. In the heat of the moment, he confessed that he too had experienced a similar situation. His wife had been unfaithful. He'd even had to pay off her lover to leave her. The sum was substantial. What a scoundrel, I thought to myself about Lou. He never told me about this. As I fumed over my murdered partner, Monsieur Daudet added that he despised Lou, especially for the fact he had another woman. If my wife has a lover, he'd better be loyal, Monsieur Daudet exclaimed. I asked him if he had a cigarette, but it turned out he didn't smoke. I can't say I completely crossed him off the suspect list after that, but for the moment, I had nothing more. So I inquired if Monsieur Daudet knew the other woman. Yes, she was a singer from a club called Grenelle. I knew her. It was Fleur Molinier. We often ran into each other on the same social occasions and parties. If she and Lou had been lovers, there was a chance she knew where my money was. There was just one problem. No one knew where Fleur was. She'd quit Grenelle a few days prior. I had to reach out to another acquaintance of mine, Vincent. A true virtuoso in the art of lockpicking, he dealt with the door to Fleur's apartment in a matter of minutes. There is no lock I can't open. Except for your heart, Julie, Vincent joked before he left. Fleur's apartment was pretty and elegant, but it was apparent that the owner had been in a hurry, getting ready to go somewhere the last time she'd been here. The closets were open and empty. My money and Lou's was nowhere to be found. I wondered if Fleur had fled to Spain to wait for her lover there, or had she decided to keep the windfall for herself and killed him before leaving? I was about to go away from there, but then someone knocked me hard on the head. When I came to my senses, I found myself in a study, filled with luxurious things. But instead of indicating status, everything there pointed to the owner's lack of taste. Sitting at a large table in front of me was an obese lady in her 40s. She held a cigarette with a filter and blew smoke that almost touched my face. I sensed a faint scent of vanilla. Looking at me, she asked, "Where's my money, Julie?"